Over the years, our kids have had a lot of illnesses. 6 kids means a lot of childhood sniffles and coughs. And when our kids weren't feeling well, it affected our entire home. Luckily, some clever guys in Brisbane have come up with the perfect solution: Rehydrate.
Rehydrate are delicious drinks that rehydrate up to 3 times faster than water alone, packed with essential electrolytes. Rehydrate is one of the few rehydration products that is safe for all ages. Stock up at Coles and be prepared whenever illness strikes.
It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
How can I be better? Because yes, what I did was wrong, but that doesn't make me wrong or a bad person.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Well, we've made it to the end of the first week of the podcast and we're getting all geared up because, school is getting closer and closer by the day. Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson, the author of 6 books about raising happy families. I'm here on the Happy Families podcast with my wife and partner in podcasting, Mrs. Happy Families, Kylie Coulson, mum to our 6 daughters. And we're back at the Friday edition of I'll Do Better Tomorrow. Now, for those of you who are new to the podcast, the idea of I'll Do Better Tomorrow is basically we look at parenting insights. We kind of reflect on the week and think, what did I learn this week? Or what went well? Or what can I do better as a parent next time? Maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's next week. Just, next time I have that incident going on. So, Kylie, why don't you go first? Because I always go first. I get so carried away, so excited. But I reckon this time you should go for it because you've been doing some reading, some study.
Well, one of my New Year's resolutions is to actually spend more time in books. I have a love-hate relationship with books. I absolutely love them, but I just seem to struggle to make time for them. So this year, I've changed it up. I've already finished one book and I'm now trying to finish a book that I've been trying to finish for about 2 years.
I bought this book for you a long time ago. So it's a Brené Brown book.
It's Brené Brown and it's Daring Greatly. And I have tried to read it twice before and I have loved what I've read. But the problem is there ends up being these big gaps between my reading and then I have to start again.
Oh,
so I'm on my 3rd reading of the first few chapters.
We love Brené Brown, and if anybody knows her or knows how to get in touch with her, we would love to have her on the podcast. I'm just putting it out there. I mean, you never know who's listening and who knows. So shout out to Brené. Anyway, what's your parenting insight? Your thing that's going to help you to do better tomorrow? I
didn't pick this book up to help me with my parenting. And Daring Greatly is, I guess, it's coming off the back of the Roosevelt quilt. The Roosevelt quilt.
I didn't know Roosevelt was a quilter. What's the Roosevelt quilt?
The Roosevelt quote.
Was it warm for winter?
It's not the critic that counts. Everybody knows that quote.
The man in the arena quote.
That's right.
Yeah. The one whose face is marred with dust and blood and tears who I can't remember. I used to have it memorized. I love it.
Well, it's one of our favourite quotes, and in the past we have memorised it with the kids. And so I was really drawn to it. And so she talks a lot about, showing up and being in the arena and not accepting other people's opinions of ourselves if they're not willing to be in the arena with us.
Right.
And one of the things that she really tackles is the difference between shame and guilt. Mm-hmm. And it really resonated with me because I have experienced both in various situations and specifically when it comes to parenting. And so often we kind of interchange the two.
Yeah, they're very, very different.
But they mean really different things.
Yeah.
And so her definition was the difference between shame and guilt is best understood as the difference between I am bad and I did something bad.
Yeah, what I did was bad. That's when you feel guilty. But when you feel shame, you actually internalize it as a reflection on who you are as a person.
That's right. And so, as I looked back on some of the experiences I've had, I have lived into that. I am a bad person. I'm a bad mum. What I did was so intrinsically wrong. I can't come back from that, and then other times where I go, that was actually really bad. How can I do something, do better next time? And so what I've loved about our Friday episodes is that opportunity to reflect and look back and go, how can I be better? Because yes, what I did was wrong, but that doesn't make me wrong or a bad person as a result of it.
Or maybe a better way to say it is, it doesn't make me wrong overall. It just makes me wrong in that moment. I wrote about it in the start of 21 Days to a Happier Family. One of the biggest moments in my parenting life was where I completely blew it with our eldest when she was just 2 years old, 3 years old, whatever it was. And that sort of led me to leave my radio career, go back to school, spend the next 8.5 years as a full-time student before I got my PhD and started the life that we now live, where I work with parents to have happier families. But I remember distinctly thinking to myself, I'm a bad father. After I'd had that awful moment with our daughter, with Chanel, I really believed that I was a bad father. Now that was a whole global assessment of my value as a human being in that moment. In other words, I felt deeply ashamed.
Well, and she talks about how shame is so paralyzing for us. And I'm just going to read you a tiny little excerpt that just really stood out to me. She said, just like Roosevelt advised, when we dare greatly, we will err and we will come up short again and again. There will be failures and mistakes and criticism. If we want to be able to move through the difficult disappointments, the hurt feelings, the heartbreaks, the bad decisions that we make that are inevitable in a fully lived life, we can't equate defeat with being unworthy of love, belonging, and joy. If we do, we will never show up and try again.
Yeah.
And I just love that, because as a parent, I'm going to get it wrong. And not because I want to, because I'm human. But if I live into that feeling of shame, then I'll never try again. I'll never try to be better. And as a mum of 6 beautiful human beings, I want to be better for them. I want to show up. And so each day I'm going to get back in that arena and I'm going to fall down and I'm going to find a way to get back up. And that's what I've learned this week, which I've just loved.
Yeah, that's beautiful. One thing that I'd briefly add is that the kids rely on you to get up. The kids rely on you to not let that shame defeat you, to not let the guilt overpower you, to not live into that idea that you can never be good enough, that you are a bad parent. They're so forgiving. Kids, they just rely on us so much that they will forgive some things that really shouldn't be forgiven, quite frankly. But kids will forgive because they just want us in their lives so badly. That's awesome. Hey, in just a second, I'm going to share with you an insight that I had that really changed things for one of our kids earlier this week.
Can't wait.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
Are screens creating tension at home? Tweens, Teens and Screens is a webinar to guide families to healthy, safe super screen solutions. Buy today at happyfamilies.com.au/shop.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Well, we're looking at how we can do things better tomorrow. And I had an experience this week, Mrs. Happy Families, that I was so excited about. Our 6-year-old Emily, not doing very well at all, really cranky, having a massive tantrum. She's been having a few of those lately. I think the school holidays are starting to wear her down.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even, you look at it through the term, everybody's really excited at the beginning, and as the term comes to an end, everybody starts to get really tired. And it's the same with holidays.
Yeah, need to get back to school.
We're really excited about having, a lack of routine and just lack of structure, and we get to a certain point where our bodies kind of just go, we need that structure back.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing it more and more in our little Emily.
So she's been hard work, big tantrums. And so I'm a bit type A. I don't relax particularly well. I'm not a let's just stop everything and be mindful and meditate. I do teach people how to be mindful, and I try to encourage it in the kids, and I even try to do it myself, but I'm not great at it. But Emily was having this meltdown, and I stepped into the room and picked her up and gave her a hug, and she pushed back and fought, and she was really, really cranky. And fortunately, in that moment, I was actually pretty good. I was pretty relaxed and calm, and just knew that she needed my help. She didn't need me to be cranky at her. And so I did this mindfulness practice, and it just, when you practice a little strategy and it works with the kids, and I just nailed it. And I can't even remember what it's called now. It's been so long since I read about it, but it's basically getting the kids to connect with their senses in a count back 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 way. So I asked her if she could tell me 5 things that she could touch, and she was pretty cranky, and she said, "No, I can't." And so I gently said, "Well, I can stay with you and we can find 5 things that you can touch, or I can come back soon. Would you like me to stay or go?" And she sort of went, "Rah." I said, "Well, I'll stay. Let's see. What can you Oh, no, we didn't do touch, sorry. We did see. What are 5 things that you can see? Because it's very easy to see 5 things. I said, can you see me? And she said, I said, can you see the bed? I said, oh, well, that's 2. What else can you see? And then she sort of giggled a little bit and she gave me 2 or 3 other things that she could see until we'd come up with 5 things. But she was still really cranky. And I said, okay, well, you can see all those things. Now let's do 4 things that you can touch. And she started to play the game with me. She gave me 4 things that she could touch. She talked about the carpet and her clothes and my knee that she was sort of leaning against and whatever else it was. And then I said, okay, so that's 5 things we can see and 4 things we can touch. What are 3 things you can hear? So I sort of stepped her through the senses and she told me that she could hear the birds outside or the cicadas, I think it was, and she could hear the fan whirring above us and she could hear my breathing or her breathing or something. And I said, well, what are 2 things that you can smell? And she told me 2 things that she could smell. I think one of them was my aftershave, and then she cupped her hands over her mouth and said, I can smell my breath. And I was like, oh, that's disgusting. And so she started to giggle. And I said, well, what's one thing that you can taste? And I don't remember what she came up with, but they're the 5 senses, right? What can you see? What can you touch? What can you hear and smell and taste? And by the time I'd done that, it probably took about 1.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. She was so calm. She was so easy to deal with. And we had like a 15-second chat about, next time you're feeling upset, what else can you do? I gave her a big hug and that was it. Like it was just epic. And it reminded me of how effective mindfulness can be to ground us when our emotions are really big. The other day we were talking about psychological distancing and we talked about all those psychological strategies that we can rely on there with temporal distancing and channeling an inner mental mentor or imagining you've got an audience. But sometimes, especially for little kids, just bringing them into the present moment by focusing on their senses just calms everything down. So if you're struggling, I
usually find just a hug works really well.
Yeah, well, she didn't want to hug anybody in that moment. She was pretty feral. So anyway, that's my I'll do better tomorrow. That's my insight. Just focusing on those 5 senses.
You're lucky you didn't end up with a lion kiss,
A lion kiss? What's a lion kiss?
They lick your face.
Oh, that's disgusting. I hate it when she does that. Did you teach her that?
No, I did not.
She got it from somewhere and it wasn't me, Mrs. Coulson.
It was Chanel.
Oh, that's gross. Well, anyway, we hope that this has been a useful episode for you in making your family happier, whether it's overcoming guilt and shame or whether it's helping your kids to ground themselves during tantrums with some mindfulness practice and tuning into their senses. That's really what the purpose of the podcast is, to help you to make your family happier. If you've enjoyed the podcast, we'd appreciate you leaving a review at Apple Podcasts. Those ratings and reviews help other people to find out about the podcast and how they can make their families thrive and flourish. We really appreciate the work of Justin Rulon, who produces the podcast from Bridge Media, and our executive producer is Craig Bruce. And if you'd like more information about how you can help your family to flourish, especially if you'd like to have ongoing monthly support via our amazing Happy Families memberships, just visit happyfamilies.com.au.